Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Employee to Boss podcast. I am your host, Hayleigh Hayhurst, the owner of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcast agency specializing in editing, marketing, and strategy. And today I have a podcast episode for you all about your influence. So we're talking about how to leverage influencers to grow your brand, your business, sell your products, and even how influencers can really impact your business in the B2B space and how you should really be looking into leveraging them if you want to take your business to the next level. Going into this interview, I was thinking that influencer marketing really was for products or something like that, where it's not a service, it's something that you can physically sell. I'm thinking TikTok when someone's, putting on makeup and they're like, oh, this brand is this. That's what I was thinking about. But my guest today, Alessandro Bugari, he talks about how you and your B2B business can even use influencer marketing to grow your business. So let me tell you a little bit more about Alessandro before we get into this episode. Alessandro, he's Italian. You're going to hear his accent in a minute. He is a digital entrepreneur and growth marketer, serving as the co-founder and CEO of the Influencer Marketing Factory. This is a global agency specializing in influencer marketing, assisting brands and companies with launching campaigns on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Alessandro is recognized for his expertise, being a member of both the Forbes Agency Council and the Fast Company Executive Board. So in this episode, some of the topics that we cover are staying on top of things because he started influencer marketing before influencer marketing was even a big thing. So how do you stay on top of what the next big thing is? We also talk about, should smaller businesses be using influencer marketing and what does that look like? And case studies and how he creates these to help his potential clients really make decisions on if they want to work with him or not. Alessandro and the Influencer Marketing Factory, it's a huge team. You should check out their website and see all the people that are working there because you have to scroll for a while. There's a big team. And so we talk about that as well. So this episode is just full of great marketing tips, how to use influencers to grow your marketing, and just a whole lot about business. So let's get right into this episode with Alessandro. Hey, Alessandro, thank you so much for joining me on the Employee to Boss podcast. I am so excited to be talking to you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, your team reached out to me, and when I saw your LinkedIn come over, I was really excited because you work with influencers, but not in the way that a lot of people may think of influencers. You actually work with the business side of that. So the businesses who want to grow their brands through influencer marketing, which is a huge revenue source. And I'm really excited to dive into this topic today, especially for the listeners who maybe have products or services that want a little bit of help promoting them through influencer marketing. So how about you start with introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your story from employee to boss?
Absolutely. Happy to do so. And, we Italians, we talk a lot, so we'll try to make a long story short. But yeah, as I just said, I'm Italian, easily understandable from my accent as well. I moved to the States now, like 8 years ago, something like that. Before that, was in Copenhagen, Denmark for my master's degree. And before that, Milano, that is my city in Italy, the north of Italy. So I changed in different locations, like before New York, where I'm now, I did a couple of years in Miami. So I wanted to experience, different cities, different cultures. And when it comes to my personal journey, so I always been a freelancer / entrepreneur all my life. So like even before when I didn't have my own company, I was doing freelance work all the time. So for me, it's a bit different. Like, the term employee, it's something that it's a bit difficult, right, to relate for me because I never worked at a typical 9-to-5 corporate job, commute, go into the office. But I always work with a plethora of different clients, across the world. And all the time I work usually by myself or with very small teams, either in startups or as solo freelance. And I started initially when I was like very young. I don't do that much these days. So like, graphic design, websites, like I literally did my first website when I was 11 years old. At the time, it was only like HTML, CSS was not even a thing at the time. So, talking like a boomer here, but just to say that I saw like, the beginning of the era of the internet, and I felt in love with it. After that, and all the graphic design, I started working as a growth marketer or growth hacker. These are the two type of terms usually they use. That basically it's a job where you have to think out of the box and doing marketing activities in order to bring more customers, to a client. And I was primarily working in the B2B space, and as category was SaaS, so software as a service. And I learned a lot in that because you have to think all the time, again, as I said before, out of the box. Maybe the marketing budgets are a bit like, smaller. And so I spent many years there, and in doing that, and I learn a lot, because all the time you have to think like new ideas, right? How to compete to maybe competitors have much more money than you. And that's basically what I did, like, so far. I changed different cities, but all the time I have marketing as a big thing that I always loved doing. But yes, like I was working usually for other agencies, I was helping out other agencies and so on. So even I've never had the typical 9 to 5, before starting my own agency, I was basically working hours, paid per hour, paid per whatever was it, and that finished there. Even though I'm just gonna add a last thing before we go into the other part of the agency now. All the time, I always had this entrepreneurial mindset with me since I was very like young already. When I was doing like, what was that, maybe 13, 14 years old, I started looking into, or maybe 15 years old, I started looking into like Google AdSense and things like that. So in my head, it was always like, how can I monetize without doing the 9 to 5? And when I was then 18, or 19, I created my first startup. It was a website about what to do in Milano, my city. So I had a team of 20 people already at the time. And then after that, I got back to freelancing. So I did a lot, during this journey, and learned from both. That I can tell you more about it, of course. And now, yes, I own this agency, and so the journey has been not drastic because, again, I didn't go employee to boss necessarily. It was a bit of ups and downs on that, and both of the experience kind of merged together.
Very cool. And I love how you started your entrepreneur journey when you were 15 years old. I
Mhm.
think that is so cool. And tell us about how you came up with the concept for the influencer marketing factory.
Mhm.
When did you start this business?
So basically, when I was in Copenhagen, I was studying for my master's degree in something called digital innovation and management. And so, since innovation was part of it, I always love to see what is next. Right? I am a person I always look at the future. I am a big fan of progress and innovation. Therefore, I was like, okay, what is next? And I was already working as a growth hacker. I was working with this other person in Copenhagen, and we were looking for the next big thing. And together we kind of found out that influencer marketing was growing. And so I was like, let's look into that. Like at the time, we're talking about a time where Facebook was still kind of present, Instagram was strong, Vine was starting, but then it was discontinued. So it was kind of, every was new but very chaotic in terms of data and analysis. So since I was doing my master's degree and I started working in that industry, in the vertical, I had to write a thesis about something. And I'm not a big fan of academia myself. I always studied, but always work it together because I love challenges. And so I was like, okay, I had to write this 100-page thesis. Since I have to do it, let me do it on something that I'm already working on. And that was influencer marketing. So I wrote a thesis. I think it was maybe the first person to create this simple but effective algorithm on how much to pay influencers. So I created a little tool in Node.js. It's a JavaScript language. You were able to put a username, and you were given follower numbers, engagement rate, and how much to pay. These days you can easily find them, but this was 8 years ago. So basically there was nothing out there before that invented this. And so basically I started looking at data because I had to write the thesis. I started reading a lot of materials about it, right? And I started realizing, wow, this is huge. Like it's still small, but it can get like much bigger in time, because I was noticing that the more you read about people not clicking on banners anymore, people don't care about out of door advertisement and billboards and TV. Then something new has to arrive, and that the thing was influencer marketing. So combining together, I was already working into that industry that was so new. I had to write a thesis about it. I was so into that, and that's how I started my passion. And that fast forward, then I moved to Miami. I opened the agency, and now here we are. But it all started because I was looking for what was next.
Yeah, very cool. And it's really interesting to me how quickly the influencer marketing area, the industry has really changed. Like you were saying, how 8 years ago there was really nothing
Hmm.
like what you created. And now I hear influencer marketing all the time. It's really a big way that brands lean on marketing their products. And you work with huge companies who are using your services to reach those influencers. And so tell us about the economy of influencer marketing right now. Like, why are so many big businesses leaning on it? And really should smaller entrepreneurs be using influencer marketing as well?
Yeah, I'll try not to cover the basics of influencer marketing, but anytime that there are new generations, there are new medium and everything, what happened is that the moment that as a business you do not adapt, you die, right? The moment that you are like, you know what, I don't believe in these, let me just continue doing TV advertisement and still spending a lot of money for production and everything, you slowly start realizing that your customers are not your customer anymore. Like there are new generation of customers, and therefore they expect something new. So we've been seeing like a shift of budgets, right, from traditional advertisement to influencer marketing. When I started doing these, companies were asking, "Oh, what is influencer marketing? Tell me more about it." Now you don't have to educate them on what it is because they know. So now finally the discussion is mostly about the ROI of the campaign, what is involved in terms of offering an outcome. We're talking numbers, we're talking budgets. So definitely we went from the educational point to let's talk business, let's talk numbers and so on. So it's growing, it's going well. There is still sometimes a bit of confusion when it comes to either terminology around that. Sometimes still brands talk about the creators when they should talk about influencers and vice versa. There is still confusion sometimes about the difference between UGC and CGC, all these type of things. But definitely better compared to years ago. Bigger budgets, and I would say that overall we went from a nice to have to a must have. Like these days, you cannot not look into influencer marketing. So what I say all the time is that you shouldn't necessarily do it because everyone is doing that, but you can be blind and be like, oh, I don't even care because that's not for me. We are seeing more clients that are just, let me test it out and let's see how it's go. And maybe depends by the social media that you want to use. You don't have to be on TikTok because everyone is, right? And so on. But I would say that overall, budgets are bigger. There is more shift in budgets overall. There is a lot of curiosity. There is more, I would say, as I was saying, like more of a discussion about numbers and ROI these days compared to years ago. There was all this educational part about like who are influencers and so on.
Yeah, that's very true. I think that that makes a lot of sense of looking now more at like setting those KPIs, making sure that there's actual goals to be reached rather than maybe just going after the influencer with the most followers. There's
Mhm.
probably more of a strategy now that businesses can use when wanting to partner with creators.
Totally, especially when it comes to vanity metrics.
Mhm.
Finally, brands are understanding that not just because someone has 50 million of followers, it means that you should put all your eggs in one basket. And that's also what we do. Like we all the time help the clients understanding what they should do and why. And many times we still, not many times, but sometimes we do receive some requests of brands be like, I want to work with those people just because maybe I know their names, they are big on Instagram or whatever, but then we have to make them realize it's not just about vanity metrics. You should check into not even AR, because what I see about ER, so engagement rate, can be easily boosted through paid or fake engagement. So we look at quality of the comments, what the people say in your comment section, historical data, how many clicks you brought, how many conversions. We look at those are the metrics that matter the most, because you don't even want to waste money on paying someone based on the follower numbers and then realize that maybe this happened in the past. Like you can have millions and maybe getting 10 clicks on your stories. Up until there is no transparency, that is very difficult. So we help clients in understanding what they should do also based on that.
Yeah, that's really important for anyone listening to know is like your follower numbers do not directly correlate to how much money you make or how much engagement you have. A while ago, I've been in business for 4 years, and one of my clients, I would say like 3.5 years ago, he wanted to look like a bigger podcast than he was. And so he went and just bought a bunch of followers. And
Mm,
I was like, what the heck are you
yeah.
doing? I couldn't continue working with him after that just because I was like, really, we would have to start over. There's no saving based on how many followers he bought. But I think for any online business owner, it really is all about that actual engagement and organic growth rather than just wanting to look bigger than you are. Definitely.
No, yeah, absolutely. Especially when it comes to at the end of the funnel,
Mm.
you prefer to having less people but highly engaged. They're gonna be your customer than having just random people that it's just a noise, and then they're not gonna purchase your product. They're not gonna sign up for your, like webinar or whatever. So yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So tell us, I'm sure you have a lot of experience in this, and partnerships are a big part of influencer marketing. Can you tell us more about what makes a good brand and creator partnership? Like contracts, I'm sure are important, but what else makes a good partnership there?
Absolutely. No, yeah. So when you say contracts, absolutely crucial to have one agreement with each influencer. We do, of course, all the time with, if we have 10 people, 20 people, 100 people, we do a single, specific influencer agreement with each of them. You have to be very clear in the scope of work. So usually it's like deliverables, much you're going to be paid, when, for what, in exchange, if there are any guidelines. Like it's very important to be on the same page because you want to avoid too much of back and forth because that is what is going to delay the campaign, right? So good, like you need to be transparent from day one and be on the same page between the brand and the influencer on what they want to achieve, what is the message behind that, what is the storytelling, the narrative, the tone of voice, everything like that. And I would say that for both parties, so the influencer should be professional, right? Should understand that it's a paid work, therefore it should be available for correction if needed. If there is like a request specifically from the brand, look into that. If you have to post many times you have to post on a certain date because maybe of a bigger activation. You cannot just ghost the agency or the brand and disappear completely. And unfortunately, that still happens sometimes. So that is like the my advice for the creator would be, and the influencer would be, just be a professional, and understanding that there are like more pieces involved into that. And on the brand side, I would say a couple of advice. One, respect the influencer in terms of monetary. Like if they're asking 10 and you are saying one, try to understand that it's their job. Therefore, try not to negotiate too much on like almost that you're gonna insult their work. So try to find a good negotiation skills there, and that's also how we help in our agency. And then overall, just trying to understand that the second advice would be the influencer is the person that knows very well the do's and don'ts of social media. They are the ones that spend the more time than corporate marketing people on social media. Therefore, as a brand, you should open and welcoming to new ideas, new trends, and new things. I don't want to be that you have to be all the time either silly or whatever and jump on any trends out there. Absolutely not. Many times that backfires because people that love your brand might love it for a specific reason. You don't want to change your personality for 1 week of glory on TikTok and then be completely forgotten or actually ruin the relationship with your existing customers. But at the same time, be open to listen to influencers because they are the one that knows what works and what doesn't. And so many times, a brand comes in and be like, yeah, I want to do like these great ideas. Then they get ideas, they get scared and be like, oh, this is not really us, like we don't want to experiment. And then you go back to something that is not going to work out. And we many times we're like, you know what, go and test it out, and we tell them like, hey, this content is that it's not going to work because this generation, these other people, this specific industry, whatever, they don't want to see this type of like either boring content or like whatever it is. We tell them and maybe that doesn't perform and then they're like, oh, why didn't perform? Well, we told you, right? It's not going to perform. So I would say overall be very open to discussion, both parties, and respect each other and understanding that the brand is a brand with a lot of moving pieces, and the creator slash influencer are people that's their job. So you should also understand their schedule and everything.
Yeah, and they definitely would know their audience more than, the brand that's probably
Hmm.
reaching out to them, especially if they've been in the influencer space for a while. They're definitely going to know what their audience
Hmm.
loves, what performs well, and they'll have more insights than maybe the brand will have. But also, one of the things that I was looking at on your website was how big your team is. Like your team at the Influencing Marketing Factory. So you have people all over the
Hmm.
states, you have people in different countries, you have like different positions. How did you start and then grow to this? Because I think, for businesses who want to have
Hmm.
some sort of agency style, like you are a great example of having a lot of different team members.
Yeah, so basically, this is the typical, immigrant entrepreneur story, right? Right from Italy with no money, no connections, and actually, really, that what happened. So basically, after let's say an adventure that didn't go as planned with other people, what I did is that I was like, you know what, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I did my first startup, as I mentioned before, when I was like 19. The thing is that the first time I didn't make a single dime, I didn't make money, but I learned so much in terms of relationships, networking, anything related to being a good boss and so on. So I learned all the soft skills, but I didn't learn about the business. So this time I was like, I want to learn about the business. And so basically with my co-founder, we put $1,500 in the business. That's all we had at the time in Miami. This was a bit less than 6 years ago. And our idea was like, let's go and just let's have a few clients and let's chill on the beach. That was the idea. Like, it was just like, let's take a few clients, let's do a boutique agency, and let's see how it goes. And the thing is that, at the time I was looking at, again, what was the next big thing, right? And at the time, Musically was becoming TikTok. And so basically, what I did is that I downloaded Musical.ly at the time, and I saw a bunch of like very young people dancing and lip syncing. And I was like, okay, that's not the app for me. So I disinstalled it. I saw that. And then once I start seeing again this content, but it was now TikTok, I was like, you know what? I think that is gonna be an interesting one. So what I did is that I created a landing page on our website, you know, that was saying like TikTok influencer marketing agency, and we were the first one. I'm a big fan of SEO, search engine optimization. I've been doing that since I was like really a kid, basically, and so I'm pretty good at it. And so we went out with a new offering that was something that was coming up for a few brands, but no one was offering that. So we started having the major music labels approaching us at the beginning, right? So Sony Music, Universal, Warner Music Group, they wanted to have their songs going viral. And at the time, if you remember, like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, on TikTok was that easy with like $100 paying someone and going with 10 millions of views. This is much more competitive, but at the time was incredible. So we started doing that, and after getting the first music labels approaching us, we started expanding the team. So also for me, being an immigrant and understanding about the rules and the laws and everything in the US, finally we started getting the first people that were like contractors in Europe at the time. So a couple of people in the US, a couple of people in Europe. That helped us also for time zones, because when you have to work with your connections in the places of the world somehow, or new clients, at the beginning you work literally 16 to 18 hours a day, no weekends, and then you have to adapt to any time zones, because if you find a client in Australia and that is going to be the only client helping you out for paying the bills, you wake up at 3 in the morning. There is no other way to do that. So at the beginning I was literally waking up at 4 in the morning for several months, and I was working for Europe for like 8 hours, and the other 8 hours was US. And you have to do that. Like, I say this all the time. I don't like when, gurus go online and be like, yeah, open my thing and look at me with my Lamborghini and this and that. And yeah, only 4 hours a day of work. No, BS. That is like complete lie. You have to work a lot of many hours. And so what happened is that after working that many hours, we start getting more and more clients. Our positioning was getting like, bigger and higher in positioning for SEO, and also what we did it is that we started giving away information, good information, for free. So we started creating reports about the creator economy and so on. We started doing like 100 pages of reports, exclusive surveys. And what we did it is that we start giving these to journalists and reporters, because they need the data. They hate to be pitched. So I was like, I'm not pitching you anything. I'm giving you information. If you want to mention us, that would be great. That's how we also started. So with zero in marketing expense, like cost and PR, we got on major publications. So that helped you to get more clients. So then we got clients such as Google, Meta, TikTok, and so on. They become our clients, and then you start building the slowly the team. So now we are 60% more or less in the US, and 40% is, I would say, majority is Europe based. We have a lot of people in Amsterdam, we have other people in the UK, Spain, Italy, and so on. And now we also have one person in Dubai. We have on the other, completely other side, we have a person in Argentina, one person in Colombia, and we have, I would say, people that speak altogether around maybe 15 different languages in the team. So we're like around 50 people right now, a lot of different languages. 77% female led. The co-founder is a woman, so we have all these cultural aspects that for us are very important, because at the end of the day, we wanted to show that an agency can be a non-toxic place where to work. And then for us, it's very what we are really proud of. So in addition to the professional that we are, we're also good people that love to work with each other. But really, it started with $1,500, two people. Let's see how it goes, and then it can explode. And during COVID, everyone was with their phones, and now we're here, and still growing.
Wow, I am really amazed by that and how you said this in the beginning, but you were always looking for the next big thing
Mhm.
and always having that mindset. And you're very right. Like when you start a business, it's not going to be 4 hours a day to get millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And I think that's great transparency there because you do have to put a lot of work into it. And until you can hire and until you can have
Mhm.
help, it is all you trying to build this brand. And so, on your website, you also have case studies on there that I would love to talk about a little bit because that's another part of
Mhm.
business that I think a lot of people can use for marketing. So, is this the same concept of how you started your, marketing your business through those journalists and newspapers and media sources by giving them free
Mhm.
information? Is this the same concept as that?
Yeah, so basically, when it comes to information, I'm a big fan of saying all the time, like, don't sell, but educate, right?
Mhm.
That is very important. I think at the time that you are able to showcase what it can do, that is gonna like sell much more than just going there and be like, hey, let's jump on a 15 minutes call. Brands need to see social proof. They want to be sure that you're not the first one. They want to be sure that you have experience in the same vertical. And for instance, like we are very good with beauty brands. Like we have tens and tens of them, from US based to nowadays a lot of Korean brands, because of course, we all know that in Korea, skincare and makeup, it's very important in the culture. And so we have like so many. Therefore, whenever we get a new potential prospects in the beauty, we have so much to share, so many metrics, so many successful case studies. And in the years, we built a lot. Like what you can see on the website is, I think, 1/50 of the of the case studies that we actually have on different industries. One myth is like, oh, it works only for B2C. Actually, we also have got like companies in the B2B space or industries that usually don't think about for influencer marketing, such as insurance companies, banking, pharmaceutical devices. So if you tell the story in the right way, you find the right influencers, so you look at data in the proper way, influencer marketing can work well. And that's why what we want to show on the website, that no matter the verticals you're in, if you plan it well, you can get amazing results.
That's very interesting how the companies want to make sure they're not the first, but they probably want to make sure that they're doing it better than everyone else. And so that's great that you have these case studies, and I'll definitely link them in the show notes just for any of the listeners to go and see like how you show the results. Because there's different ways to show business results, right? And I think
Mhm.
that this, especially for your space, is one of the most effective ways to do it. Like literally showing what results you've got in other businesses.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the CMO, the head of marketing, the chief revenue officer, whatever, they care about certain metrics. The thing is that, unfortunately, many times you cannot showcase what you would like to in terms of certain metrics because of NDA, right, that you sign with
Mhm.
clients. You have to be respectful of that. So, for instance, there are certain numbers that you cannot share that are related to, CPC, CPM, CPI, CPA, any metrics that are related to usually the real cost of the campaign or the ROI of it. They usually don't want to share those metrics because then competitors can easily reverse engineer those numbers and be like, okay, this is how much you're spending on this agency per this campaign. So they try not to give too much information out, but somehow you can, certain metrics you can understand and be like, okay, they were able to get this CTR, like the CPC, maybe you're not gonna put an absolute number. So you're not gonna put like $1, but you can say 55% decrease in. So it's what call it like relative, right? A relative type of benchmarking. But for some companies that's enough, just to be like, okay, they decrease these numbers, they increase the ROI, the ROIs of those campaigns. They already have experience in my industry, because if you talk about fashion, it's not the same as talking about cars, and you need to know both worlds, to or any other verticals there. So that's what we do. We showcase, and then anytime that these clients or potential clients want to get more information, we have so many other case studies. We send them usually by email. But yes, it's very important to showcase what you did in the past.
Yeah, very cool. So, what other advice do you have for entrepreneurs wanting to grow their businesses, maybe through influencer marketing or if they want to have some sort of agency style?
Yeah, so I would say first of all, be all the time, open to what is next. As I was saying before, the moment
Mhm.
that you stop adapting and you just close your eyes and be like, oh, I don't even want to see like this method. Up until you don't try, you don't really know. What I say all the time is that, like, if you think about it, customers at the end of the day, and the market is what makes the price, it what makes ups and downs in a company. Don't be therefore just like reluctant to try new things just because in your head it doesn't work. I make you this example about when you do influencer marketing, for a new brand or someone that want to test them out. The the marketing manager might be, what, this is the content is gonna work out. Therefore, let's not even do A/B testing because we know for sure that this is what works. And that's the biggest mistake, because you don't even know up until you try with customers. And many times they realize that the content B, so whenever you do A/B testing, the content B was actually the one performing the best. And they thought all the time, oh, but we thought that this was it. Yeah, in your head, absolutely. But you have only one perspective. You never know what people will love. And sometimes maybe it's a raw, rough video without the proper lighting that is going to convert much more compared to the video that you recorded in studio with the perfect audio. You will never know up until you don't test. So test things and be open,
Mhm.
when it comes to influencer marketing. This is like for influencer marketing. And then instead, when what I say all the time also, it is to brands and entrepreneurs, like, overall, that are just interested in me, like, I want to start my new thing, whatever. What I say all the time, I know that can be common sense, but I say all the time, like do it. Just start it and just do it. Because I met many people that are all the time, I have to read just another book about entrepreneurship and I'm gonna be ready. I just have to go to another event and understand this. Like, they procrastinate somehow. Maybe they are like afraid to go to market, and
Mhm.
therefore they always try to find an excuse. And for me, it was the opposite. I go with the maybe a product, a service that I don't like, but that's perfect. What is that saying? Like, if you're happy with your product, whatever, it means that it's too late. There's something about it. Like, you don't want to wait that much because other competitors are going to get in the way. So just do it. Go to market, and you're going to learn what to change depending on the feedback from your clients and everything. So being open, be welcome to new ideas, see what is next, and jump in it. Like, don't waste too much time in your own theories in your head. Up until you don't test the market, you will never know.
Yeah, that's great advice, especially of, being on top of the next new thing. So, what is the next new thing for you? How do you stay on top of that even as you are feeling like, what you have is great? How do you keep pushing yourself forward?
So it's a good question, because these days we are, I think, in a very particular moment for social media, where each American social media is copying each other's, right? Each one is copying features from each other's. There is not been that much of innovation compared to what is happening, let's say, in China, for instance. Thinking about social commerce, right? Live streaming. They have been there for ages, and in the US it's just slowly starting. But I think that in the US, Europe, we've stopped kind of innovating lately. So to be honest, like, I have been looking for the new big app. I don't think it's there
Mhm.
yet. I think there
Yeah.
have been a lot of mini apps popping up with some very specific feature. They go on the news for 1 week and they lose complete traction, right? Think about all the apps that we saw, Be Real, Dispo, all of them. They tried big traction for 1 week, 1 month either, and then completely disappeared. So, the sort of trifecta between, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, it was still is bringing the majority. But overall, what is next? I would say social commerce, not as we know it right now in the US, we're still kind of far behind, but as it is in Asia. is going to be the next big thing, because think about it. If you mix together commerce and influence, that are one of the two oldest thing from ancient times, you have a powerful thing. But I think that both technically speaking, in terms of personalities online, we're still missing good hosts for streaming. We are still missing good quality of products on TikTok shops, and now we have Temu, the low quality stuff. So overall, I think that is assessing. But if I had to look at one thing that is going to be the big one, absolutely social commerce.
Yeah, that's exciting to hear about. And for your business, do you work with, I know you work with huge brands, Amazon, Meta, other companies like that. Do you ever work with smaller influencers, or are you mainly on the bigger brand side of the deals?
No, absolutely. We also work with smaller businesses, mid enterprise. We don't work anymore with like super small businesses that don't have like enough
Mhm.
budgets, mostly because we realize that for the type of work and the time that we put in, very small campaigns would be basically, we will lose money, to be honest, on those. So we have a minimum now, but we work a lot, and we still work a lot with direct to consumer brands. With the companies that maybe you don't even know about, but just receive funding for, let's say, $30 million. Therefore, they want to, and they have to show traction. You never heard about them. They might be a team of 20 people, but they have the funding. They need to show growth, and we help them. So I would say that we work again with a plethora of different brands, different sizes, and you can learn from each of them. And not because it's a big brand, it's necessarily going to be a great campaign. We did great campaigns for smaller brands because they were sometimes more open, right, to get different ideas, while sometimes maybe bigger brands, they are a bit, sometimes, I don't want to say reluctant, but the hierarchy inside a big brand takes more time to say okay to a content, or sometimes because of guidelines and their brand image, they cannot do certain things. So I think that with smaller brands you can play a bit more, and with bigger brands you can do maybe bigger campaigns, but sometimes a bit more difficult to experiment. So I think that it's nice to have both.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I said this in a interview a couple weeks back of when you are like an enterprise company, like huge, you have a huge team, you can't test things as much. You can't
Mhm.
I was interviewing someone about their A/B testing sort of program. And so like you can't be testing as much, you can't be experimenting. But when you are growing, it might
Mhm.
be you're working a lot, you might have to put in a lot of hours, but you still have that freedom of seeing what works, seeing what you enjoy doing. And I think that is one of the best parts of growing a business.
100%.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining me today. How can our listeners find you and potentially work with you?
Yeah, so personally with me, if you have any questions, I am of course, on LinkedIn. Just look for my name. I'm there, happy to connect. We have other also avenues. So in addition to the websites, we also have a newsletter called Spreading the Influence that is both on LinkedIn and also on our website. You can sign up, and every couple of weeks we send news about social media. And then I also host a podcast called The Influence Factor. It's in the top 0.5% currently, at least, to listen notes. We have very great guests coming from both sides. So creators on one side, brand managers on the others, and also sometimes people that work in the industry. And so it's a nice way to having 20 minutes every Wednesday just to listen to what is happening there. And so we try to do that, and then we also have a lot of resources on our social media. So we every day basically go out with little snippets of videos, short form videos about what is happening in the industry. So either on LinkedIn personally with me, our social media, our website, or LinkedIn newsletter or podcast, or kind of everywhere being social stuff. Of course, we have to be there, but happy to connect. And if anyone listening has questions, happy to help and answer.
Awesome. I will put all of those links in the show notes. And since I am a podcast manager and love talking about podcasting, I'd love to ask you a question about your podcast.
Mhm.
What is one of the biggest impacts it's had on your business, and kind of how are you using it in your business?
So it's a great question. I personally don't use it necessarily for like lead generation. So I don't do direct attribution of leads thanks to the podcast, but it's helping for two things. One, getting our names out there and position ourselves even as you know the experts, right? And two, it I would say allowed us to get in the door, with a foot in a way that if I was trying to sell on someone, it would be very difficult. So in this case, it's like, hey, let's do a podcast episode together. And once you you meet this person more on the soft skills of selling, right? Then hey, here you go, buy our campaigns from us. So it helped me personally and our company to increase the quality of the network in a more, I would say, again, soft way. And so overall, I think that it might not necessarily bring you direct things that you can see the ROI of that, but on the long term, it helps so much in become someone in the industry, becoming even more an expert. And again, I made connection that I think that only by email selling on them would be basically impossible. And I was able to meet with great people from amazing brands that usually don't really want to talk to you unless it's something like conversational, like a podcast.
Yeah, I love that. That reminds me of what you were saying of how you sent out all of those free stats and information to the
Mm.
journalists. I mean, it's just building your brand, building your expertise, and becoming, seen as the expert. So that's how a lot of my clients use their podcasts as well. And it's a great way to really build your authority in the industry.
Okay.
So thank you so much for sharing that. And
Of
I just
course.
have one last question for you. I wrap up every podcast episode with this one question.
Mhm.
I would love it if you could challenge the audience with 3 things this week. Any 3 things to move forward in their life, business, or brand. How would you like to challenge them?
Yeah. So similar to what I was saying before on the just do it, I really believe in it. So anything that you want to do could be as starting a company, there is a big thing or a small thing like I have to go to the gym. Just do it. Don't overthink it. Like the moment that we start doing is that it's like with everything, like removing caffeine from your life, stop smoking. Like the first days are the most important, crucial ones. Up until you don't start, you don't start. So even with the business, you want to start a business, you want to start a new line of a product, whatever, do it. Then get the feedback. Number one. Two, related to this, what I say all the time is that if you are still in an employee situation and for some reason you want to start your own thing, you have to jump in it. What I mean by that is that you cannot have one feet in your 9 to 5 and trying to be an entrepreneur. No, it's never gonna work. You're gonna do both of them poorly. If you want really to be 100% into something, do it. Leave your job and then you start that. Of course, doing a smart way. Maybe we have some savings and sort of plan B. But you want to go into a situation where your brain is like, wait, I mean, I don't have a 9 to 5 job anymore. I had to find every possible way to make this business go. And that's what helped me personally. Like I was in a position of I don't have really a plan B and I have to do everything possible. So doing the jump, it is what helped me. And the last one, it is that I know that can be scary and you're gonna have a lot of ups and downs being an entrepreneur and being a boss. But you're also gonna get so many achievements and so many things that as a 9 to 5 you will never able to live like an experience. So I know there are a lot of things that might be scary and yeah, you're gonna have a lot of ups and downs, but believe me, the ups that you will feel, they are like not comparable with any other like 9 to 5 type of jobs you can have out there or even as a freelancer, because once you get in the entrepreneurship and you start like killing it, it gives you opportunity to meet people that it would be impossible to meet. It will go to events that are only close to certain people and so on. We'll start experience a part of life and part of the world that usually you don't see unless you create something. So just do it, jump in it, and believe me, you will get amazing experience in life.
Oh, those are amazing action steps. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll put all of your links in the show notes, but I've learned a lot from you, and I know the audience has as well. So I just really want to thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Employee to Boss podcast. If you made it to the end of this episode, I hope that you implement the actionable steps from this week's experts so you can get started with your business today. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the Employee to Boss podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps more than you could ever imagine. Remember, a little progress each day leads to big results. We come out with a new episode every Tuesday. To access our show notes, transcripts, and courses, please check out espressopodcastproduction.com.